Good evening to all the radio listeners tuning into our show. Welcome, everyone. Greetings from your friend, Alex Morgan. It's a warm night here in Los Angeles, California. Reasonably warm temperatures for the beginning of a summer that promises record-breaking heat. Here in Hollywood, at 7:05 on a still sunny evening, the thermometer reads 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Today, the highest temperature recorded downtown was 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Not too bad compared to the temperature in the San Fernando Valley, which surpassed 95 degrees. A predicted heat wave seems to have begun today, and as I've mentioned before, it's set to break records for the hottest summer since records began in Southern California. Moving on. Our guest, Mr. Draco Nova, who claims to have had contact with extraterrestrials, is already here in the studio. I announced his visit on yesterday's show for tonight. Good evening, Draco. How are you? I'll address you informally. Let's not pretend we don't know each other.
Yes, that's true. We've known each other for some time. I'm well, happy to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Don't try to make it seem like it was easy to get you here. Just because our listeners can't see us doesn't mean we can deceive them. I must warn our audience that I pleaded a lot with Mr. Draco Nova to come and share his experience. It took me a long time. I have to admit, I thought you'd never agree to talk about such an unusual incident.
Facing an audience with such a sensitive topic is intimidating for anyone. How did you find out about this matter?
Through a casual comment from someone both you and I know.
Who?
I don't think that matters right now. I'll tell you later if you want. How did you and I meet, do you remember?
It's been a while, honestly, I don't remember. Probably at an art exhibition or something similar.
Extra information for the audience. Our guest is, among other things, a painter. Do you still paint?
Yes, of course. Painting and drawing are my favourite therapies.
Do you have any other favourite therapy?
Honestly, yes, dancing.
Of course. You mentioned before that you had danced professionally in your youth.
No, I never did it professionally. I studied dance, but I never considered pursuing it as a career.
Would you like to explain to our audience the type of dance you studied? They probably assume you danced rumba, salsa, or mambo.
I primarily studied contemporary dance. At times I took ballet classes, but never with the intention of pursuing it as a professional career.
Any specific reason for not considering dance as a profession?
I'm a countryman disguised as a city dweller. I grew up in a very small town. If I had been born in London or New York, I might have considered it, but those weren't my circumstances.
How did you end up in Los Angeles?
Like everyone else, escaping from something. Pretending to find a lifestyle that was supposed to make me feel better.
Were you, like everyone else, seeking the American dream?
No, not at all. I wasn't naive when I arrived here. I was ignorant about living in such a complex society, but chasing a dream. That seems more like a marketing slogan. No, that wasn't my case.
Have you been living in Los Angeles for a long time?
Yes, I think I've been here for about 20 years now.
Quite a while. Are you okay if we start talking about your extraterrestrial friends?
Let's be clear from the beginning. They're not my friends. I don't even know if they're extraterrestrial.
Okay, let our listeners help us decide whether they're extraterrestrial or not.
No, Alex, I didn't agree to come here to turn this into a public forum. I came to present a situation. What people think about what's presented here is beside the point.
You don't want people to participate?
No, I don't want people to participate. I don't even think the topic is appropriate for your audience.
What are you talking about, friend? The extraterrestrial topic has always been appealing to all kinds of audiences. It's a toy that never goes out of style.
I've already said that I don't believe my experience involved extraterrestrials.
Let's say then that it's about a paranormal experience. Does that work for you?
I'll commit to narrating the incident in an entertaining way. Although I'm not sure if the story is suitable for the 8 p.m. audience.
If your story includes obscenities, try not to be too graphic in your descriptions, so we'll avoid what you fear.
I don't fear anything. It's just a heads up. Lately, this political correctness is everywhere. We live in a society that boasts of being very open-minded, but in practice it's very traditional.
What does political correctness have to do with extraterrestrials? Sorry, I meant your paranormal experience.
Not every day does one expose themselves to being heard by a bunch of strangers. I don't know the moral values of everyone listening.
Don't worry, moral values are continuously changing. Let's delve into the topic. What happened?
Okay. As you probably know, I have an exhausting job. Every day I come home tired, stressed, eager to get to my bed, sleep, and forget about the world I live in.
Nothing unusual in hearing that. Probably everyone listening faces the same issue. Tell the listeners what your job involves.
I'm a chef. At the time of the incident, I cooked for a group of people from Monday to Friday.
I understand that the group of people you're referring to isn't just any group. Explain to us who they are.
I used to prepare meals for individuals under medical care, specifically patients in the process of recovering from addictions and other mental disorders.
You cooked for a group of sick people?
I wouldn't call them sick.
Friend, addictions are illnesses. Besides, you mentioned they suffered from mental disorders. Mental health disorders can influence a person's ability to carry out normal daily activities.
I didn't see any difference between the people there and those I encountered walking down the street.
I know where you're going with that, but that's not tonight's topic. Bottom line, you worked at a mental health facility.
That's correct.
How many patients did you cook for? Regardless of whether the term doesn't sit well with you, they were individuals dealing with an anomaly, which is why they chose to be in that institution.
I cooked for 6 people.
You cooked for only 6 people.
Sometimes I cooked for fewer, 5, 4, 3. I even cooked for just one person.
Why were there so few people?
It's a regulation imposed by Los Angeles County. These types of facilities can't attend to more than 6 patients at a time. Patients live in that place for the duration of their treatment.
It seems the number of patients can vary. What causes that?
When residents finish their treatment, they leave and new ones arrive. Some stay for months, some only last 2 or 3 weeks. It all depends on the type of treatment they need.
Why do you complain that it was an exhausting job? From my point of view, cooking for 6 people doesn't seem tiring at all, especially considering it's what you've been doing for several years. Your improvisations in the kitchen must have been well calculated. What made it so challenging?
Explaining that is a topic for another show, and I didn't come here for that.
I imagine it has to do with what I mentioned before. You cooked for a group of people that wasn't just any group of people.
That's right. I cooked for a group of people who weren't like you or me.
From the way you say it, I gather that you and I are in an unfavorable position.
That's a slightly touchy subject. It's better not to delve into it.
You and I have had a previous conversation. We've clarified some things that you'd prefer not to touch upon. But remember, there's an audience listening. We should provide an explanation for this mystery, don't you think?
The group of people I cooked for belongs to the American elite.
That doesn't surprise anyone. Be more specific. I know you're a personal chef, accustomed to working for millionaires. Enlighten us more about this particular situation. What makes this group of people so special that talking about them becomes a touchy subject?
Calling it touchy was an exaggeration on my part.
I believe you, but that idea doesn't come from nowhere. There's a backstory regarding the group of people you worked for. Tell us, to understand a bit more. How close can you get without feeling vulnerable? What else can you reveal about that group of people?
It's not advisable to be so curious in these circumstances.
You're the one who brought up the topic. Don't leave us hanging.
They are people who belong to the 1%. I believe that's what they've been labelled as.
The 1% of American society? The group of people you worked for belongs to the 1% of the wealthiest people in the country. Is that what you mean?
The people I cooked for in that place, yes. They all belong to the 1% of society that holds power, wealth, and political influence.
Are you still working at that place?
If I were still working there, I wouldn't have agreed to come here and disclose what I've come to disclose. No, I don't work there anymore.
The 1% of people in the United States is a lot of people. Currently, it's around 310 million people. That's a lot of individuals. There are countries that don't have that many inhabitants.
Yes, the 1% of Americans is a lot of people, but it's not the number that's important.
Tell us more about the people you worked for. I imagine they're individuals related to Hollywood, Wall Street, Silicon Valley.
Yes, what you're saying is correct.
Could you try to give us more precise details about them?
I'm not going to mention names, Alex. We've talked about this already.
Did the paranormal phenomena happen in that place? Are some high-profile individuals likely involved? Is that why it's not convenient to reveal information about these people?
No, none of that. That's where I was working at the time the incident occurred.
Does that place, those people, have anything to do with the matter that brought you here?
Yes and no.
That's the kind of answer that's frustrating. Remember, we don't have all night. Is it relevant to talk about that place, those people? Will it help us understand the case?
Partially, yes.
Let's move things along. Get to the point, please.
The day of the incident, I was still working at that place.
Do you remember what day it was?
I remember it perfectly well. It was Halloween night.
Ah, I see. Halloween night. A great start for an interesting story. I hope there are ghosts, Dramatic twists, tension, drama, suspense, and those tricks that Hollywood movies have accustomed us to. Will they be there?
I'm sure they'll be there. But nothing like Hollywood movies. In fact, this is something Hollywood never touches.
Ah, no? Hollywood has devoured all taboos: power, sexual lust, the rot of corruption, political machinations, the darkest secrets of religion. No subject has escaped the voracious appetite of the film industry. Except for markedly scatological films like Salo by Pier Paolo Pasolini, or provocatively themed content like those by Lars von Trier.
No, it's none of that.
Then,
My story is a blend of science fiction and gay pornography.
Hollywood explores anything that generates profits. Remember the movie Boogie Nights? That's a direct immersion into the adult entertainment industry.
Yes, but Boogie Nights portrays the world of heterosexual pornography. The subject of gay pornography in American cinema continues to make people uncomfortable.
What do you think causes that?
Hollywood is afraid of the penis. Gay pornography involves erect penises. There's nothing more pornographic than a hard erect.
Are you suggesting that your paranormal experience involves orgies among men?
Yes, there's something of that, but I wouldn't use the term orgies.
A gathering of men? I don't know where this conversation is going. I suggest you hasten.
Okay? Halloween night is a very important event in the city.
Halloween night is important throughout the United States.
Yes, I know, but the Halloween celebration in West Hollywood is another story. A real chaos. I don't think there's a more chaotic Halloween celebration anywhere else in the country. Keeping that in mind, I wanted to take precautions. I live near the community college, right in the heart of Hollywood.
In what part of the city were you working at that time?
On Beverly Hills.
You had to cross West Hollywood by necessity.
Exactly. Crossing West Hollywood at any time of day is already insane. But with such a crowded celebration, maneuvering through that crowd was simply impossible.
Halloween turns West Hollywood into a giant parking lot, both for cars and people. I know, I've experienced it. Many spend hours behind the wheel, desperately searching for a place to park and never find one. Traffic is already a regular nightmare in this city. Halloween in West Hollywood becomes the epicenter of a gathering everyone wants to attend. So, what did you do?
I took a shortcut. I decided to skirt around the city. That day I left work at 7 in the evening. Being in Beverly Hills, it was easy for me to head up into the hills. I took Beverly Glen Boulevard, which crosses all of Bel Air and leads to Mulholland Drive. My idea was to cross the entire city by driving along that road and exit onto the Hollywood freeway.
Mulholland Drive is a road that winds along the entire chain of hills separating the cities of West Hollywood and Hollywood from the vast San Fernando Valley. You took a longer route to get to Hollywood, which is where you live.
I thought taking Mulholland Drive was a good option. I don't like the crowds of celebrations like Halloween, and that night I was very tired. I needed to sleep to regain energy. The next day, a tough day at work awaited me.
You had the option to stay overnight at your job.
That wasn't a good option.
I understand. And what happened next?
It was along Mulholland Drive where this thing happened that came to change my life.
Okay. Your extraterrestrial encounter, or whatever is the correct way to name it, happened while you were driving on a road.
That's right, that's what happened.
Many people claim to have had these kinds of experiences while driving at night on lonely roads. It seems this is one of those cases. How exactly did it happen?
As I had imagined, Mulholland Drive at that time of night was a deserted road. I had already passed through the inhabited area when a bright spot in the sky caught my attention. Its brightness was so intense that it reminded me of childhood days, when in December, kids help at home to set up the Christmas tree. That glow reminded me of the star placed at the top of the Christmas tree. I remember starting to smile when those memories brought that image to my mind. That day had been particularly tough at work. I remember leaving work with numb hands on swollen feet from standing for so many hours, and a backache, undoubtedly caused by the same. Alex, being a chef working for millionaires is a job that has nothing glamorous about it. The level of creativity demanded by the job is insane. Pleasing people who, with a smile, tell you they're never satisfied can be humiliating at times. I've heard of chefs who, at the end of a struggle, reach such a level of frustration that they consider suicide. That's why seeing that little point of light in the sky was so gratifying at that moment. I took a moment to contemplate the luminosity of the entire city glowing from above as if it were a sea filled with luminescent tides. I considered stopping by the side of the road but chose not to. When I looked back up at the sky, searching again for the star, I saw that the pinpoint of light, which was once just a dot, had multiplied in size several times over.
Did the object zigzag?
No, it maintained its course without wavering. Its glow had intensified. It was a very bright white light. I began to think it was a plane on fire. I must confess I was awestruck. It was the night when witches are celebrated, and one carries the spirit of the celebration. Deep down, what I wanted was to encounter a feast of fireworks, but soon that began to take on a size that turned my festive spirit into something tragic.
When all this was happening, were you still driving your car?
Yes, I didn't need to stop. By this point, the star was of considerable size and was right in front of me. In fact, my intention was to reach it.
Weren't you afraid? Didn't you hear the inner voice that sometimes warns us of danger?
No, I didn't feel fear. My sense of curiosity had intensified. I had a premonition that something unusual was going to happen, and I wanted to witness it.
What did you imagine would happen?
An airplane crash.
You had a bright, shining light approaching you that reminded you of the star placed on top of a Christmas tree. What kind of airplane crash were you imagining?
I thought that what was approaching was a malfunctioning airplane. I imagined it was going to crash, and I wanted to be in a suitable spot to witness the accident. Why? Pure morbid curiosity.
Didn't you imagine you were part of a paranormal sighting?
Not at all. I was sure that it was an airplane crash.
When did you realize that it wasn't what you thought?
Shortly after, when its brightness intensified. It turned into a light of stunning beauty, a sphere engulfed in very white flames. It no longer seemed to me like an airplane. The small bright light I compared to a Christmas star had turned into a huge sphere emitting a brightness that began to blind my sight. That's when I understood that the object was coming directly toward me. I thought it was a meteor, a massive object falling from the sky.
The object was coming toward you. Didn't you think about running away?
Run? Where to? It's strange, but I didn't feel fear. At that moment, my life began to make sense.
What do you mean? Obviously, you were in danger.
My life wasn't pleasant. I had no purpose. For the first time, something truly momentous was happening in front of me, and I wasn't going to run away. Finally, a luminous event made me feel part of something significant.
I've read that these types of encounters cause euphoria in those who experience them. Didn't you think that burst of fire might have consumed you?
I didn't think it would even touch me. Alex, I had an empty, monotonous, boring life. I felt like a slave trapped in a place I didn't want to be. Witnessing that gave me hope that in seconds, life can change completely, even if for the worse.
You surely suffered from anxiety, stress, or depression. What happened next?
I saw it getting closer and closer at an incredible speed. I thought there would be an impressive explosion, that whole parts of the city would end up in flames. What came next happened in just a second. That intensely blinding spot of light crashed beside the road. I saw that immense burst enter a hill, an area populated only by shrubs. That's when I understood it wasn't what I thought. It was when I supposed that it was not from this world.
Could you describe in detail what you saw that led you to think that it didn't belong to this world?
The object was very large and emitted a very intense light. I saw it crash not far from where I was. I expected to see an explosion, but it landed without making the slightest noise. The meteor crashed at an incredible speed. If it had been something from this world, it would have caused a shockwave that would have shaken the entire city.
Were you still driving at the time of impact?
Yes, luckily. That's why I arrived quickly at the impact site. It was right beside the road. I stopped my car and saw where the object had impacted, covered by a fading cloak of light. Everything happened right in front of me.
Did you see anyone else witnessing what you describe? You mentioned the road was lonely at that hour of the night. Did you never see anyone else pass by who might have observed the same thing as you?
No, I didn't see anyone else. In fact, when I started driving on Mulholland Drive, I never saw any cars on the road, neither in front of me nor behind me.
That's odd. Were you alone? Was this whole event set up just for you? You do realize there are no witnesses to support your account, right?
I'm not aware. I suppose there might be someone, but I don't know.
As far as I'm aware, that event was never recorded. No one saw anything. There were no reports in any media, and there were no visible traces to confirm that it happened. This city is immense. Millions of people live in Los Angeles. Regardless of this happening in a solitary place, there's always someone snooping around. Many millionaires have their mansions in that area. They have surveillance systems and personnel patrolling, fearing being stalked by someone. It's a highly monitored area, but apparently that day everything conspired for you to be the sole witness of this sighting. Are you aware that all of this leads to the thought that it might have all been an invention of yours?
Yes, of course, I was always aware of that. That's why I kept it a secret for a long time until I had to explain certain events that began to occur.
What kind of events are you referring to?
Certain accidents I was involved in later. But we'll have to continue the story for what comes next to be understood.
So, do you stand by the truthfulness of your account?
Of course, I have no need to engage in the game of lies.
Let's get to the point. When did the contact with the paranormal happen?
The enormous luminous object crashed in an empty field. The light patch covering the impact site was about the size of 4 tennis courts.
Don't evade my question. When did the contact with the paranormal occur?
The contact with what fell from the sky happened later. First, I dedicated myself to observing the light fading over the impact area, and within a few seconds, I entered a hypnotic trance.
What's a hypnotic trance? And what makes you think you entered into a trance?
My curiosity led me to focus intensely only on the phenomenon in front of me. All my senses were fixed on that. I forgot about the world. It was as if I was receiving precise instructions from somewhere and I had no will to question or reject what was being indicated to me.
Precise instructions from whom? God, so much drama. What happened next?
Do you find it dramatic? Just wait until you hear what comes next.
You promised me something appealing to the audience, and so far, all you've given me is a tale similar to many others out there. I even think you could be accused of plagiarism.
Are you insinuating that I'm lying? I remind you that I refused this interview many times. I didn't ask to be here.
Yes, that's true. But you also have to agree that these kinds of matters lead to all sorts of falsehoods. There are many charlatans seeking their 5 minutes of fame. They take advantage of an audience always hungry for sensationalism and scandals. A morbid interest that ends up generating nonsense like the chupacabras, admit it.
You must have heard more than nonsense to insist so much on me accepting this interview.
Truth be told, I witnessed something that left me perplexed. That's why I invited you. I hope we get to that point, and you explain what it was that I saw that deeply impacted me. To this day, I still don't understand that situation. I ask you to continue with the story. Apologies for everything earlier. You left off saying that, on the roadside, you saw a blanket of light disappear.
Okay. When I saw the light fading, I realized everything around me was still and there was no sound. I don't know if it was because my ears were blocked, but not even crickets could be heard. The wind stopped blowing. I experienced a sensation as if time had stopped. I was motionless, unable to move. It's not that I wanted to move, but I felt like my body weighed a lot. I felt a cold sweat and numbness all over my body. The expression on my face froze. I kept my gaze on the same target until the blanket of light covering the place completely vanished. The moonlight amplified so much that I thought it was daytime. I still felt trapped in that state of unconsciousness when, in the distance, I heard voices. They were the shouts of some boys driving a car heading toward me at breakneck speed. Their shouts were deafening, and they were yelling things that I couldn't understand.
Having blocked ears is normal when there's pressure caused by atmospheric changes or altitude changes.
You know the hills, they're not very high. Altitude and atmospheric changes don't explain anything. The silence reigning in that place at that time was part of the paranormal experience.
Accounts of paranormal events defy the laws of physics. Often, there's a lack of logical explanation, but that doesn't mean there isn't one.
I'm not here to provide a logical explanation of the events. All I can do is testify to what happened to me.
I know, I'm just providing context for the audience. We're diving into the realm of the supernatural. You'll mention unusual circumstances, atypical behaviors, situations that will significantly deviate from what's considered normal.
After what happened that night, nothing in my life was normal anymore.
Having said that, let's get back to the topic at hand tonight.
The car in which several boys were shouting passed by me. I felt the speed of the car, which must have been extreme because as it passed, I felt like my clothes were about to be ripped off my body due to the suction effect. They were on the verge of running me over. With their shouts, they were probably asking me to get out of the way. I could hear those same voices fading as the car sped away until finally the voices disappeared in the distance. It all happened in seconds. Soon after, a second car approached me. Unlike the previous one, this car moved calmly. It was a convertible and several young boys were inside. It stopped by the side of the road. I heard the boys talking without understanding anything. I was standing on the road blocking the lane the car was using. One of the boys got out of the car, approached me and said something I couldn't understand. I couldn't move my head to look him in the eyes. The boy, noticing my confusion, knew something was wrong with me. He insisted on communicating with me, placed his hand on my shoulder, showing compassion. Then, I was able to look him in the eyes, and what I saw was a tall young man with an impressively beautiful face. I immediately felt a sense of familiarity. Seeing him concerned about my state made me assume that this young man was a prize I desired, finally granted. I embraced him and began to cry.
You're on the road, disrupting traffic. The driver of a passing car stops upon seeing you in the middle of the road. The man, very upset, gets out of his car to demand explanations, and you fall in love with him?
Yes, that's how it happened. I know it's an unusual situation, but we mustn't forget that we're talking about an exceptional case. Today, I understand that at that moment, I was under the influence of something that conditioned me to act that way.
Were you on drugs that day?
No, I don't mean being under the influence of a drug. At that moment, I was still in a trance. I lost inhibition due to the presence of paranormal activity.
It seems like an inner desire manifested itself, emerged when you felt free.
In the moment when I was in the boy's arms, my prejudices disappeared. That closeness turned into a sexual encounter. I noticed an increase in my desire, and I assumed the boy shared similar sensations. I presumed he was my lover and began seeking to satisfy my sexual demand in him. When he realized my intentions, he abruptly moved away from me. I didn't feel guilty or ashamed. Without the slightest hint of shyness, I approached him again. We locked eyes for a few seconds. I listened to his breathing and interpreted the sound he made while breathing as an invitation. As I approached the boy again, I noticed a sparkle in his eyes that I hadn't noticed before.
You're exposing your private life, your emotions, your most intimate desires. The trance you claim to have been experiencing exposed your vulnerable side.
I'm not afraid to show myself as I am. My experience with the paranormal was essential in shaping and updating my way of being and thinking. My sexual desire for that boy was something I fantasized about every night. The paranormal event made it a reality.
Was he truly as beautiful as you describe?
His being represented the closest manifestation to what I conceive as perfection.
And did he actually agree to fulfill your most intimate desires?